The sun shone brightly over London, illuminating the iconic landmarks that surrounded Buckingham Palace. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the nearby trees, adding to the lively atmosphere as tourists and locals alike gathered in anticipation. The changing of the guard was a time-honored tradition, drawing spectators from all corners of the globe, eager to witness the precision and pomp of the royal guard. Clad in their distinctive red tunics and tall bearskin hats, the guard stood stoically at their posts, embodying a sense of duty and history. As the clock struck 10, a palpable excitement surged through the crowd. Families took photos, couples held hands, and children pointed in awe at the soldiers who represented centuries of British heritage. The cheers and laughter of the spectators created a symphony of sounds that filled the air, contrasting sharply with the solemnity of the guard's unwavering stance. Among the crowd was a diverse mix of people, young and old, locals and tourists, all united in their appreciation for this quintessentially British spectacle. Yet, unbeknownst to them, a darker element lurked just beyond their view. A group of bikers had arrived on loud motorcycles, their leather jackets emblazoned with hateful insignias that signaled their allegiance to an ideology rooted in division and intolerance. As they revved their engines and parked their bikes haphazardly near the entrance to the palace grounds, their raucous laughter shattered the festive atmosphere. The biker gang's presence was jarring against the backdrop of tradition and elegance. They exuded an air of aggression that was at odds with the dignified proceedings unfolding before them. While most onlookers remained focused on the guards and the ceremony, a few turned their heads toward the bikers, sensing trouble brewing. The gang exchanged taunts among themselves, emboldened by their numbers and fueled by a misguided sense of superiority. As they approached the line of guards, it became evident that they were not there to appreciate the pageantry, but to provoke. The Black Royal Guard stood resolute among his fellow soldiers, his posture sharp and authoritative. He had trained for years to uphold this prestigious duty, embodying honor and respect. But as he caught sight of the bikers approaching with malicious intent, a knot formed in his stomach. The energy shifted. Tension replaced excitement as whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Little did they know that amidst this moment of hostility, high above in her palace window, the queen herself was watching intently. Her keen eyes took in every detail. The prideful display of her guards contrasted starkly against the blatant disrespect being directed at them. In that critical moment, history was on the verge of unfolding. A clash between respect for tradition and a brutal challenge to it that would resonate far beyond this day's events. As the scene unfolded, the characters who would shape the events of the day began to emerge, each with their own story and motivations. At the forefront stood the Black Royal Guard, a man named Corporal James Thompson. With years of dedicated service, James was not only a skilled soldier, but also a proud representative of the diversity within the British Armed Forces. His family had roots in London that stretched back generations, and he wore his uniform with both pride and responsibility. James understood the significance of his role, guarding the monarchy while standing as a symbol of unity in an increasingly divided society. His demeanor was stoic, yet beneath his disciplined exterior lay a fierce determination and resilience. He had faced challenges throughout his career, but nothing like what was unfolding before him that day. As he scanned the crowd, he felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He was aware that moments like this were rare, filled with tradition and national pride. Little did he know that this day would test not only his resolve, but also the principles he stood for. On the other side of the square, the biker gang members were a stark contrast to the disciplined formation of guards. Their leader, a burly man named Rick Iron Fist Mason, epitomized aggression and bravado. Clad in black leather adorned with patches that bore symbols of hate and division, he commanded his group with a sense of entitlement that came from living on the fringes of society. Rick thrived on chaos and confrontation. It was part of their culture within the gang. The thrill of instilling fear gave him power in a world where he often felt powerless. Beside him were several other gang members. Jake, known for his quick temper and reckless behavior. Lisa, whose tough exterior hid her deep-seated insecurities, and Mike, whose loyalty to Rick stemmed from a desperate need for acceptance. Together, they formed a volatile unit that thrived on defiance and intimidation. The atmosphere surrounding them was electric, a blend of bravado and hostility aimed squarely at anyone who challenged their worldview. As they moved closer to the Royal Guard formation, their jeers echoed through the air, taunting and belittling. They saw James not just as a soldier, but as an embodiment of everything they despised, a symbol of change in a world they were unwilling to accept. Meanwhile, high above them, hidden behind ornate curtains in Buckingham Palace, Queen Elizabeth II watched closely. With years of experience navigating political landscapes and public sentiments, she understood the implications of what was happening below her window. Her keen observations revealed not just an act of disrespect, but an opportunity for leadership in confronting societal division. The stage was set for an unexpected clash between honor and hatred, a moment that would ripple through history as both characters prepared for an encounter that would alter their lives forever. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as the biker gang approached the line of royal guards, their laughter and jeers cutting through the earlier sounds of celebration. Rick, Iron Fist, Mason led the charge, his imposing figure striding forward with an air of arrogance. His gang followed closely, emboldened by their leader's bravado, ready to unleash a torrent of insults and aggression upon the unsuspecting guards. "Look at these fancy boys in their little costumes," Rick shouted, his voice booming over the crowd. A few onlookers turned, eyebrows raised in disbelief, unsure of how to react. The changing of the guard was meant to be a moment of respect and tradition. Yet here was a group intent on desecrating that reverence with crude mockery. James Thompson stood firm, his training kicking in as he focused on maintaining his composure. He had been trained to ignore distractions and provocations, but the vitriol coming from the bikers felt personal. They weren't just attacking his uniform. They were attacking his identity and the very values he represented. As Rick continued to taunt him, calling him derogatory names meant to belittle both his service and his race, James could feel a fire igniting within him. Yet he resisted the urge to retaliate, knowing that any response could escalate an already tense situation. "Why don't you take off that silly hat and show us what you really are?" Jake chimed in, a sneer plastered across his face. Laughter erupted from the gang members, fueling their sense of power as they reveled in their ability to provoke a reaction from someone they deemed inferior. The crowd around them began to murmur uneasily, some people instinctively stepping closer together as if to shield themselves from the vitriol spewing forth. A few brave souls shouted back at the bikers, urging them to leave the guards alone and respect the ceremony taking place. Yet their voices were drowned out by the chaos created by the bikers' insults. Lisa joined in, her voice laced with mockery. "What kind of soldier are you? You're just a joke." Her taunts were met with raucous laughter from her gangmates. And for a moment, it seemed that they had succeeded in shifting the energy away from admiration for tradition toward a spectacle of hostility. As tensions mounted, James felt a weight pressing on him, not just from the provocation, but from the awareness that the Queen was watching from her palace window. He understood that this moment was not just about him, or even about the bikers. It was about representing something larger than himself, the dignity of those who serve their country with honor and respect. Unbeknownst to the gang members who were so caught up in their own hate-fueled bravado, they were straying into dangerous territory. Their actions would not only have consequences for themselves, but would also echo throughout society at large. A clash between hatred and honor that was unfolding before an audience far greater than they could comprehend. The stage was set for an explosive confrontation that no one could have predicted, one that would alter lives and challenge perceptions in profound ways. The tensions reached a boiling point as the biker gang continued their relentless taunting, surrounding Corporal James Thompson and the other royal guards. The crowd, once filled with excitement and anticipation, now held an uneasy silence, eyes darting between the guards and the chaos unfolding before them. James held his ground, his back straight and eyes focused ahead, but inside he felt the weight of the gang's hostility pressing down on him like a heavy shroud. In a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Rick, Iron Fist, Mason stepped closer, his face twisted in a sneer. "You think you're tough, wearing that uniform? Let's see how tough you really are," he spat, pushing aside one of the other guards to get right in front of James. The crowd gasped collectively, sensing the impending clash. James could feel people's eyes on him, some filled with concern, others with anticipation. With an almost theatrical flourish, Rick raised his hand and slapped the Black Royal Guard across the face, a shocking act of aggression that echoed through the square. The sound of flesh meeting flesh was a harsh reminder of the brutality that had just unfolded. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Shock and disbelief washed over them as they processed what had just happened. For James, time seemed to freeze as he registered the slap, a mixture of humiliation and anger surging through him. James instinctively clenched his fists, fighting against every instinct to retaliate. He could feel his heart racing. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he struggled to maintain his composure. He remembered his training, every lesson about restraint and dignity in the face of provocation flashing through his mind. But this was different. This was an overt act of disrespect, not just toward him, but toward everything he stood for. As if sensing the shift in energy around them, some members of the crowd sprang into action. A few shouted at Rick, condemning his actions and demanding he leave immediately. Others began recording on their phones, capturing evidence of the incident that would soon circulate far beyond this moment in time. It was a pivotal moment, the kind that would ignite public outrage and spark conversations about racism and respect. Amidst the chaos, Queen Elizabeth II watched intently from her palace window, her expression a mix of concern and disbelief. She understood the implications of what had just transpired. This was not merely a confrontation between a soldier and a biker. It was an affront to the ideals she had dedicated her reign to uphold. As police sirens wailed in the distance, signaling their imminent arrival, James took a deep breath. He had made a choice to stand tall despite the provocation. The world was watching, and in that critical moment, he knew he had to embody strength and dignity even when faced with hatred. The confrontation had escalated beyond words. It was now a defining moment that would resonate throughout society, a clash between honor and hatred that would not soon be forgotten. As the chaos unfolded below, Queen Elizabeth II stood in her palace window, her regal demeanor momentarily overshadowed by the gravity of the situation. The scene before her was a stark contrast to the tradition and dignity she had always cherished. Her heart raced as she witnessed the blatant act of disrespect and aggression directed at Corporal James Thompson, a soldier who embodied honor and duty. The Queen's mind raced with thoughts of her role as a leader in times of crisis. She had spent decades fostering unity and respect among her people, championing values that counter division and hatred. What she was witnessing was not just an attack on one soldier. It was an affront to the very principles of tolerance and acceptance that she held dear as the head of state. As Rick, Iron Fist, Mason stepped forward, his contemptuous laughter ringing in her ears, the Queen felt a surge of indignation. This was not merely a matter of a guard being provoked. It was a challenge to the moral fabric of society itself. She understood that in moments like this, leadership required not just observation, but action that would resonate throughout the nation. The sound of the slap echoed in her mind, a jarring reminder of how fragile decorum could be when confronted with hatred. The crowd's gasps reached her ears, and she could see their shocked expressions mirrored in her own face reflected in the glass. It was a moment that demanded attention, one that would not only define the day, but potentially reshape perceptions about race and respect within her realm. With resolve, she leaned slightly closer to the window, her eyes narrowing as she took in every detail. The defiance in James's stance, the hostility radiating from the bikers, and the growing agitation among the crowd. The Queen knew she would have to address this incident publicly. It would not be enough for it to fade into obscurity. The nation needed reassurance that such acts of hatred would not be tolerated. As police sirens wailed in the distance, signaling their approach, she felt a flicker of hope amidst her concern. Perhaps this incident could serve as a catalyst for change, a moment where society could collectively confront its biases and emerge stronger. In that instant, Elizabeth made a mental note to prepare a statement addressing the incident once it was resolved, emphasizing compassion and unity rather than division. She envisioned how her words could echo through the halls of power and influence public discourse long after this day had ended. As she stepped back from the window, determination settled over her like a cloak. The world outside continued to swirl with chaos, but within her palace walls, clarity emerged. This was not just about one soldier or one gang. It was about standing firmly against hatred in all its forms, a mission she vowed to uphold with unwavering grace and strength. In that moment, she resolved to lead by example, demonstrating that respect for all people was non-negotiable, regardless of their background or beliefs. As the slap rang out and the bikers reveled in their moment of aggression, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. What had begun as a festive celebration of tradition quickly morphed into a scene charged with outrage. The crowd, once filled with laughter and admiration, was now a mix of shock and indignation. People raised their phones, capturing the incident for social media, while others shouted in protest against the bikers' brazen disrespect. "Get away from him!" a voice called out from the crowd, cutting through the chaos. It was a young woman, her face flushed with anger as she stepped forward, rallying others to join her in condemning the gang's behavior. "You have no right to treat him like that." Her words struck a chord, igniting a wave of support from onlookers who began to echo her sentiments. The palpable tension drew in more spectators, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding drama. Some people shouted encouragement to James, urging him to stand strong against the onslaught. The solidarity from the crowd grew as they rallied around the royal guard, forming an informal barrier between him and the bikers. Their shared outrage transformed fear into courage, and soon voices united in condemnation of hate. "Leave him alone!" another bystander yelled, clearly disturbed by the gang's actions. The collective frustration began to shift from shock to a powerful outcry against racism and disrespect. The bikers, initially emboldened by their audacity, now found themselves facing not just one guard but an entire community unwilling to tolerate their behavior. As news of the incident spread through social media platforms within moments, hashtags began trending, calls for justice and solidarity flooded feeds across the nation. Videos capturing the moment were shared far and wide, bringing attention not only to the incident itself, but also to broader issues of racism and intolerance. Activists and community leaders began voicing their support for James and condemning hate in all its forms. Amidst this rising public outcry, local media outlets descended upon Buckingham Palace's gates, eager for commentary on what had transpired. Journalists began interviewing witnesses, seeking statements from both sides of this shocking confrontation. The event quickly became a focal point for discussions about systemic racism within society and how such acts could no longer be ignored. In homes across London and beyond, families gathered around televisions and smartphones to watch coverage of the incident unfold. Conversations sparked around dinner tables as parents explained to their children why such behavior was unacceptable and how it was imperative to stand against injustice. Meanwhile, as police arrived on the scene to restore order, tensions remained high but began to calm due to the growing solidarity among bystanders. Officers moved swiftly to separate the bikers from the crowd while ensuring that James was safe. The sight of law enforcement engaging with both sides served as a reminder that this incident would not simply fade into memory. It would be addressed head-on. What started as an act of hatred had ignited a movement, a call for respect and dignity that resonated far beyond that day at Buckingham Palace. It became clear that this moment would reverberate throughout society, prompting conversations about change and unity that had long been overdue. As the chaos escalated outside Buckingham Palace, the sound of sirens pierced through the air, signaling the arrival of law enforcement. Police vehicles pulled up to the scene, blue lights flashing against the backdrop of the historic building. Officers quickly disembarked, assessing the situation with trained eyes. They were met with a crowd buzzing with emotion, some shouting in support of Corporal James Thompson, while others directed their anger at the bikers. The lead officer, Inspector Sarah Mitchell, took charge of the situation. With years of experience handling public disturbances, she understood the need for a calm yet assertive approach. She stepped forward, raising her hands to signal for silence. "Everyone, please. We need you to remain calm," she called out, her voice steady but firm. The crowd gradually quieted, their attention now focused on her. Inspector Mitchell turned her gaze toward the biker gang, who remained audacious amidst the chaos. "You will need to step back and allow us to handle this," she instructed, her tone leaving no room for dissent. The bikers exchanged glances. They had expected confrontation, but clearly underestimated the resolve of law enforcement. "Why don't you just let us have our fun?" Rick, Iron Fist, Mason sneered, attempting to maintain his bravado even as his gang began to sense the shift in power dynamics. But Inspector Mitchell was undeterred. "This is not a game," she replied sharply. "You've crossed a line today. You will be held accountable for your actions." With backup arriving, officers began to separate the bikers from the crowd. Some officers moved toward James and his fellow guards, ensuring their safety and offering reassurance amid the tension. "You're safe now," one officer said to James, who still stood resolute despite the emotional turmoil swirling within him. Inspector Mitchell directed her team to begin documenting the incident, taking statements from witnesses and collecting video evidence from bystanders who had recorded the event on their smartphones. This would be crucial for any potential charges against the bikers. As she spoke with witnesses, a narrative began to form, not just about an assault on a guard, but about a broader societal issue that could no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, as they assessed Rick and his gang members, it became clear that their bravado was faltering under scrutiny. The officers began placing them under arrest for assault and public disorder, cuffing each member while reading them their rights. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause as this tangible step toward justice unfolded before their eyes. As tensions eased and order was restored, Inspector Mitchell addressed the gathered crowd once more. "We want to assure you that we take incidents like this seriously," she said firmly. "Racism and violence have no place in our society." Her words resonated with those present. A collective sense of relief washed over them as they felt validated in their outrage. In that moment, a shift occurred, not just in how law enforcement responded to acts of hate, but also in how society viewed these issues more broadly. The response from law enforcement became part of a larger conversation about accountability and respect for all individuals, regardless of race or background. As James stood amidst it all, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The support from both law enforcement and the community served as a reminder that he was not alone in this struggle against hate, a struggle that would continue long after this day had passed. The incident had sparked change in ways no one could have anticipated, bringing together people from all walks of life in a collective stand against discrimination and violence. As the dust settled on the chaotic scene outside Buckingham Palace, the consequences for Rick, Iron Fist, Mason, and his gang began to take shape. After being placed under arrest, the members of the biker gang were escorted to police vehicles, their earlier bravado replaced by a palpable tension. The reality of their actions was beginning to sink in as they realized the gravity of what they had done. In the days following the incident, news outlets reported extensively on the altercation, with headlines highlighting the bikers' assault on a black royal guard during a public ceremony. The incident sparked outrage across social media platforms, where videos of the slap and the subsequent public outcry had gone viral. Activists and community leaders called for accountability, demanding that such blatant acts of racism be met with serious consequences. Rick and his gang faced multiple charges, including assault, public disorder, and hate crimes. As they appeared in court, the atmosphere was charged with tension. The prosecution laid out a compelling case, presenting evidence from eyewitness accounts and video recordings that captured not only the slap but also the bikers' derogatory comments leading up to it. The footage painted a clear picture of their intent, a calculated act of aggression aimed at undermining respect for authority and promoting division. During the trial, Rick attempted to downplay his actions, arguing that it was merely a joke that went too far. His defense leaned heavily on minimizing their behavior while attempting to shift blame onto the crowd's reaction. However, this strategy backfired as testimonies from witnesses painted a different narrative, one of fearlessness in standing against hate and an unwillingness to let such behavior go unchecked. As the proceedings continued, James Thompson found himself grappling with a complex mix of emotions. He had chosen to remain steadfast in his duty despite being slapped. But now he became a central figure in the trial as both a witness and an emblem of resilience against racism. The community rallied around him, seeing in his dignity and strength a powerful statement about unity in adversity. The verdict arrived after days of deliberation. The judge found Rick and his gang guilty on multiple counts, emphasizing that their actions were not only reprehensible but also indicative of deeper societal issues surrounding racism and intolerance. Sentencing them to community service and mandatory diversity training was part of an effort to address not just punishment but also rehabilitation. Public reaction to the verdict was mixed. While some felt justice had been served, others believed that tougher penalties were warranted given the severity of the incident. Nonetheless, it marked a crucial turning point, a recognition that hate-fueled actions would not be tolerated. In the weeks that followed, Rick and his gang faced significant backlash. Their identities were splashed across news articles and social media posts, leading to widespread condemnation from various groups advocating for equality and respect. They were ostracized by many within their own community. Local businesses refused to serve them, and friends distanced themselves from their toxic behavior. As they completed their sentences, it became clear that this incident would haunt them long after they fulfilled their legal obligations. The repercussions extended beyond legal penalties. They faced a lifelong challenge in reconciling their actions with how society now perceived them. For James and those who supported him, however, this moment was seen as a catalyst for change, a painful yet necessary chapter in confronting racism head-on. The incident served as a reminder that while hate existed within pockets of society, courage and solidarity could rise above it, paving the way for a more inclusive future. In the aftermath of the altercation, Corporal James Thompson found himself at the center of a national conversation about respect, dignity, and resilience. The slap he had endured became a symbol of the struggle against racism. But for James, it was also a testament to his unwavering commitment to duty. As the dust settled from the incident outside Buckingham Palace, he faced not only the emotional fallout, but also the opportunity to redefine what it meant to serve. Despite the humiliation and anger that surged within him during the confrontation, James chose to channel those feelings into something more constructive. With support from his fellow guards and encouragement from community leaders, he began to engage in conversations about racism and representation within the military. He attended forums and discussions, sharing his experiences and insights, using his platform to advocate for change. James understood that remaining silent was no longer an option. The incident had ignited a fire within him, a desire to challenge not just the bikers' actions, but also the systemic issues that allowed such behavior to persist. He became involved in outreach programs aimed at fostering dialogue about diversity in the armed forces, emphasizing how representation matters in shaping perceptions and promoting inclusivity. Throughout this journey, James displayed remarkable resilience. He received messages of support from across the nation, people expressing their solidarity with his stance against hate. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags celebrating his strength and encouraging others to stand up against discrimination. In interviews, he articulated his belief that every individual deserves respect and dignity, regardless of their background or appearance. Amidst this newfound visibility, James also faced challenges. Some individuals attempted to undermine his message, dismissing his advocacy as an overreaction or labeling him as overly sensitive. Yet he remained unfazed, recognizing that change often comes with resistance. He leaned on his training as a soldier, focusing on discipline and perseverance in the face of adversity. James's resolve caught the attention of prominent figures, including politicians and activists who sought to amplify his voice. He was invited to speak at events commemorating anti-racism initiatives, where he shared not only his personal story, but also urged others to reflect on their roles in combating hate. His words resonated deeply. They echoed a call for unity that transcended race and background. In moments of reflection, James often thought back to that day. The shock of being slapped in front of thousands felt like a turning point in more ways than one. It was a moment that tested not just his strength, but also revealed the depth of support that existed within society. While he would never forget what happened, he recognized it as a catalyst for positive change, a rallying cry for those willing to confront hate head-on. As he continued to serve in the Royal Guard, each day became an opportunity for him to embody resilience. He wore his uniform with pride, understanding that it represented more than just tradition. It symbolized hope for a future where respect and equality could flourish. His journey inspired others around him, both within the armed forces and beyond, to engage in conversations about race and identity. Through it all, James emerged not only as a soldier, but as an ambassador for change, a living reminder that resilience can rise from adversity. His commitment to advocating for respect and inclusivity would leave an indelible mark on those who heard his story, ensuring that the lessons learned from that fateful day would resonate long after the headlines faded into memory. The incident involving the racist biker gang and Corporal James Thompson reverberated far beyond the confines of Buckingham Palace, sparking a national conversation about racism, respect, and the responsibilities of individuals within society. As the dust settled, it became evident that this confrontation was not merely an isolated event. It was a reflection of deeper societal issues that required urgent attention. In the wake of the altercation, various organizations and community groups rallied to address the broader implications of what had transpired. Forums and town hall meetings sprang up across cities, providing platforms for open dialogue about race relations in Britain. People from all walks of life came together to share their experiences, discuss prejudice, and explore ways to combat systemic racism. The incident served as a catalyst for many to confront uncomfortable truths about their own biases and behaviors. Educational institutions also took notice, incorporating discussions about racism and inclusivity into their curricula. Schools began to host workshops and seminars aimed at fostering understanding and empathy among students. Young people were encouraged to engage in meaningful conversations about diversity, challenging stereotypes, and promoting acceptance. This newfound focus on education illustrated a commitment to addressing hate at its roots, ensuring that future generations would grow up in an environment where respect was paramount. James Thompson's resilience inspired many who had witnessed or heard about the incident. His proactive approach to advocacy became a model for others, emphasizing that standing against hate requires both courage and community support. Activists pointed to his story as a beacon of hope, illustrating how individuals can affect change by using their voices and experiences to challenge injustice. The media played a critical role in amplifying these conversations. Coverage of the incident highlighted not only the slap itself, but also the public outcry that followed, showcasing how collective action could push back against hate. Editorials and opinion pieces reflected on the need for accountability and societal change, urging readers to look beyond individual acts of aggression and recognize the larger patterns of discrimination that persist. While the bikers faced legal consequences for their actions, the real victory lay in the dialogue their behavior had ignited. Many began to understand that combating racism was not just about punishing offenders, but also fostering an environment where such attitudes were actively challenged. The broader implications reached into workplaces, schools, and neighborhoods, prompting discussions about diversity training and inclusive practices. As public sentiment shifted toward greater awareness of racial issues, leaders from various sectors began advocating for policy changes aimed at promoting equality. Conversations around representation in leadership roles gained momentum, pushing organizations to commit to more diverse hiring practices. In moments of reflection, many acknowledged that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. Change does not happen overnight. It requires sustained effort and vigilance. However, James's story served as a reminder that every act of courage contributes to a larger movement, a movement toward a future where respect for all individuals is woven into the fabric of society. Ultimately, this incident catalyzed a cultural shift toward greater accountability and understanding. It underscored the necessity for individuals to engage actively in discussions about race and discrimination, encouraging everyone to play their part in fostering an inclusive community. As society moved forward, it carried with it the lessons learned from this encounter, a commitment to stand united against hate, ensuring that dignity and respect prevailed in every corner of life. In the aftermath of the incident involving the racist biker gang and Corporal James Thompson, Queen Elizabeth II felt a profound responsibility to address the nation. As the head of state, she understood that her voice carried weight and that her words could either soothe a nation in turmoil or ignite further discussions about respect and unity. With careful consideration, she prepared a statement to be delivered from Buckingham Palace, determined to offer guidance during this pivotal moment. On the day of her address, the palace was abuzz with anticipation. Journalists and citizens alike awaited her words, eager to hear how the Queen would respond to an event that had captured public attention and ignited passionate conversations about race and equality. As she stepped into the historic room adorned with regal decor, the gravity of the situation settled over her like a heavy cloak. With poise and clarity, she began her statement. Today, we witnessed an act that goes against the very principles upon which our society is built: respect, dignity, and unity. Her voice resonated with sincerity as she spoke of the incident that had unfolded in front of thousands, emphasizing that such behavior would not be tolerated. The Queen reflected on the values that had guided her throughout her reign. As a nation, we must strive to uphold these ideals, she continued. Every individual deserves respect, regardless of their background or appearance. We are stronger together, united in our diversity. Her words served as a powerful reminder that acts of hate could be confronted only through collective effort and understanding. Addressing Corporal Thompson specifically, she praised his courage in maintaining his composure amidst hostility. Corporal Thompson has exemplified dignity under pressure, she said. His commitment to service reflects not only on himself, but on all those who wear the uniform. We must recognize and honor their sacrifices. The Queen's statement also acknowledged the broader societal implications of the incident. She urged citizens to engage in meaningful conversations about race and prejudice, recognizing that change begins with dialogue. It is essential for each of us to reflect on our actions and attitudes, she urged, calling for a commitment to fostering an inclusive community where everyone feels valued. As she spoke, there was a palpable sense of unity among those gathered around their screens, whether in homes or public spaces, listening intently to her words. The Queen's message resonated deeply. It provided not just an acknowledgement of the incident, but also a call to action for individuals across the nation. In closing, she emphasized hope for the future. Let us work together to build a society where acceptance prevails over hatred, a society where every person can feel safe and respected. Her statements encapsulated not just a response to a singular event, but also an invitation for collective growth toward inclusivity. As her address concluded, people felt inspired by her unwavering commitment to unity and respect. The Queen had reaffirmed her role as a leader not only in times of celebration, but also during moments of crisis. Her words would echo long after they were spoken, serving as a guiding light in the ongoing journey toward equality, a journey that required each individual to play their part in standing against hate. In the days that followed, discussions sparked by her statement permeated communities throughout the country. The Queen's message became a catalyst for change, igniting hope and encouraging citizens to continue striving for a future built on mutual respect and understanding, a legacy worthy of both her reign and the values they held dear.